Good morning, all. Hopefully,
And good
everybody's weekend.
afternoon.
Well, yeah, in another hour. Although, depending on where you are, yeah. Good afternoon, good evening, depending. If Yosef's in chat, good evening. Um, um, but yeah. So where was I? Oh yeah. Good morning, everybody. For me, anyway, it's morning. I think. Ugh.
It's still
Um,
morning, yes,
yeah.
for about another 54 minutes.
Good, I haven't had enough of these yet. But unfortunately for you all, we don't have a guest today, so I got to dust off the soapbox. So this should be a fun stream. If we suddenly go black screen, Jeff had nothing to do with it.
No, it's not my fault, but it's my job today to try to rein rambling in, so he doesn't have to go on so long and so hard and so what's the word I want there? Help me out, Robert.
Not politically correct.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go.
All right, so we're gonna take a quick spin through chat. Ryan Roger Athe, welcome, sir. It's also evening for him. He's 5 hours ahead of us. Gorilla's
Indeed.
Random Thoughts, welcome. John DeMarco, welcome. Who else do we have here? We have some guy named Professor Brainy Specs, that idiot.
I don't know who that
I
guy
don't know. I don't
is.
even know why he's got a damn wrench. Jeez, I don't know.
I don't know. I might
Um,
have to take it away from him.
yeah, or beat him with it. One of the two. Of course, we're joking. That's actually Jeff. So before anybody worries that we're picking on somebody in chat, no. All right. So
I think
today's
everybody
topic,
knows me.
yeah, today's topic, it can be a very interesting one, especially if you're talking on YouTube, and also depending on who you're talking to. The importance of history. Not only the importance of history, but the importance of protecting it. Why it's important to protect it, why it's important that we don't allow people to change it.
That never
and
happens, does it?
uh, More than I'd like. And just the importance of history, but also the importance of knowing how to look at history is another thing that I think we should cover today because
Oh,
that's
that's
very
very
important.
important.
There are I won't start with that because I don't want us to get kicked off the internet in less than 5 minutes.
Well,
Um,
let me just say, as a librarian, I know how important that is to look at history in a certain light.
because unfortunately, have a good one, Mrs. Canuck. Love you. Hopefully, work isn't being too much of a pain in the neck. So basically, we're gonna start with why is Hitler? Why is Hitler? Wow, my brain is really
You
shot.
really want to black the screen, don't you?
Yeah. Why is Hitler an idiot?
Oh,
No. I won't go that far that quick. Um,
Robert, rein it in. Rein it in. Come on.
I need more coffee. Maybe some whiskey. Um,
No, I think that'd make it worse.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, then the Irish would come out, and then we'd all be screwed. Um, so basically, good morning, Darius. So basically, why is history important? There's the old saying, thee who forgets their history is doomed to repeat it. Unfortunately, that's just been put on t-shirts and plaques and walls, and nobody really gets the meaning anymore. It's become almost like a buzzword, like a buzz phrase, something quirky to say to sound intelligent. Um, but the people who usually say it don't actually think about what that means because the next words out of their mouth usually go counterproductive to what they just said.
Ain't that the truth?
Or you look at their Twitter and you go, did you read what you just put over here? I'm just curious because
Pot calling the kettle.
1 + 6 does not equal 2. What the fuck? So you get uh are you get things where history is important because they're lessons. Think of them as like life lessons that somebody else did and you get the luxury of learning from them. You know, you didn't have to go through it to be able to learn from it. That's to me what history has always been. History to me is somebody being able to see somebody else's fuck up so that I don't make that fuck up. I can swear now, right? You know,
Just don't do it too often.
yeah, otherwise YouTube will get mad at me.
Yep.
My YouTube overlords will be mad with me. To me, that's what history is to some degree. It is a written history of people screwing up, and you read it in the hopes that you don't make that screw up. Unfortunately, people don't read it anymore. And we go barreling towards the same cliff. Just usually it's a different name or it's a different thing or but it's the same pattern.
Or perhaps they read it, but they don't heed the warning.
Yes. Or they don't understand what it actually meant, or they're too busy picking it apart because it doesn't apply to modern day. Again, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
We'll wait for the stream to get at least 10 minutes old, okay? And then I'll go into those topics because, yeah, that could get black screen quick. So basically, history is important because it's what's come before. Good, bad, indifferent, it's what's come before. But we also have to look at history in the lens that it's written. And I think that's very important. And we tend to stop doing that. Because one of the lenses that we have to remember is who wrote this. Because, I mean, my favorite one to look at is Nero, Emperor Nero of Rome. Pretty much everything we have on Nero was written by a guy who hated his guts. Right? So think about that for a second. Your biography is now written by somebody who hates you. With every fiber of their body, hates you.
I wonder how that biography will read.
Yeah. So you have to look at it within the context. Some people we know, in history are tarred and feathered in the modern day for being this absolute bugger of a person. But we really only have hints. We also don't always look at who is writing this. What are their motivations to this piece of history they're writing down that we have found or we have in a catalog somewhere? And we don't take that, or we do the opposite. We completely disqualify it because it was who it was written by. So we don't usually meet in the middle where we read the content, but we don't take it with a pinch of salt, as my dad used to say. Instead, we either completely eliminate it or it's completely factual. One of the two. There is no happy medium. It is complete garbage or it's factual. One of the two. And I don't think you can really look at history from that approach. Because history at its base is events taken place. Well, if you look at the modern day or just any day of the week, if you have 5 people viewing the same event from 5 different vantage points, they're all going to have a different writing of said event. It's the same event. The exact same thing happened. But if 5 people are watching it from 5 different vantage points, they will have 5 different write-ups of it. There'll be similarities, but there will be differences as well. And it doesn't mean that this person is lying necessarily. Sometimes they are, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're lying. It just means they saw it from a different vantage point. And you can do that with not even physical history. You can do that with mental gymnastics. You know, a person who you can take events that like laws being passed. Well, the person who's observing this from the we want it passed will see it as a glorious victory when it passes. The person who was on the other side of the aisle will see this as a major defeat. Depending on which side you read, will depend on what spin you get. So when you're reading history, you have to sit down and you have to remember who is the writer. Who is writing this account? If you don't know who the writer is, it's very hard to make a determination how much salt you need when you're reading this. As I pointed out with Nero, most of Nero's biography is written by people who couldn't stand the man. I don't think they're going to put that he gave generously on Sundays. In his biography, I don't think that's going to make the cut.
No, probably not.
So you have to know who the writer is. You also have to know Kaplabert and Number One and Dadman Walking. You have to know who the writer is. Because if you don't know who the writer is, then you don't know, like I say, the easiest way to put it, you don't know how much salt you need while reading said topic. And at the same time, I wouldn't disqualify it. No matter how much salt you need, I wouldn't disqualify it. I'd still read it because it's interesting. Even complete things that just there's no way in Hades that it could work can be very interesting to research, to go down those rabbit holes. There's this conspiracy theory that, after Ballard found the Titanic and they started bringing stuff up from the Titanic, it's proven that there's just no bloody way this could have happened. But the conspiracy theory is still there. Type it into YouTube. You'll be, go down that rabbit hole. It's a fun journey, but you have to remember to take that glass of salt with you. That pinch of salt here, pinch of salt there. Okay, that's an interesting theory, but here's the reality. So it isn't something that should be outlawed or, burned at the stake or, completely, dehumanized. It's a very interesting rabbit hole to go down. And the conspiracy theory I'm speaking of is the fact that there were people that strongly believed that the ship that went down was not the Titanic, but it was the Olympic. Now, I firmly say that I do not believe in said conspiracy theory because they just didn't have enough time. And the reason why I point towards Ballard finding the Titanic is they brought up a piece of the hull and it had the proper stamping. Every ship has its own stamp, ship number. And every part of most parts of the ship are stamped with this number. In order for that to happen, there was only, I think, 6 months that the Olympic and the Titanic were side by side. There's just not enough time to go and change all the numbers everywhere in the ship. It's just not feasible.
It's impractical.
Yeah, it's just not feasible. But it is a very interesting thought. It is a very interesting road to go down. It is, it's very interesting to look at. But again, uh, it just it's interesting because sometimes there's a grain of salt, like there's a grain of truth in every conspiracy theory. Just sometimes the grain is very, very small, such as the ship sunk. But you know, but
Yeah, we're pretty sure of that.
yeah, yeah. So it sometimes there's a very, very small grain of truth, but there's a grain of truth in every story, conspiracy theory. Um, and it's funny how some conspiracy theories went from conspiracy theories to truth because oops, we found something. Um, World War II, I laugh at people who sit there and go, "We know everything there is to know about World War II."
Do we now?
Really? We know everything there is to know about World War II. Okay. Go to England and there's buildings that have sealed files from World War II. They're sealed. They will be sealed until everyone that was in them die, and then some. Um,
So we know everything, huh?
no. There are files on the Trader King that are locked away, and well, it's the common thing. The Trader King, the king that abdicated right before World War II. So their files are locked away. It will not be unlocked until after Elizabeth is gone, and at first, some people thought it was going to be after the Queen Mother. I'm thinking it's going to be after Elizabeth, though. But probably not right away. It'll be a few years. They'll let that settle before certain documents are released. And Dadman says, "Oh, dang it, wrong button." Going down those rabbit holes can help you understand them in order to explain away things and others who may want to follow the conspiracy theories. Yeah, if you understand what they're, because sometimes you can go, well, yeah, on the surface, yeah, I could see that. I mean, the picture is painted and well enough, you might think it's an actual picture. And that's in anything. But unfortunately, the once certain things come to light, there's just, I mean, pre-finding the Titanic, there's no way you could have proven one way or the other. Because they were so similar, the two ships. And as, monstrous as it might sound, a company sinking a ship for insurance purposes never happened. Never underestimate greed and desperation. But so you get that. The other thing I want to cover now that we're 19 minutes in, yay, is why we need to protect history and stop those from changing it. And again, touch on the context of how we look at history. If you go reading something that was made in the 1860s or even as late as the 90s, you cannot look at that time frame and apply modern belief systems to that time because they didn't exist then. That was not the reality in which these people lived. This might be our reality, but it was not their reality. So judging them through a modern lens is impractical. Because if we write something off because it was bad, or we don't teach something because it was horrific, or it doesn't stand up to modern belief systems, then we lose that bit of history. And some people say, great, good, that was a bad part of our history and we should lose it. Well, the quote I opened the show with: if you forget history, you're bound to repeat it.
Yep.
And if you look at history, throughout history, there are patterns. And they do repeat a lot, way more than they should. Because people either at the time didn't have the luxury of history, because it was mostly spoken word, and not a lot of things were written down because a lot of people didn't know how to write or read, so it's kind of pointless. So you get, knowledge used to be power, if you think about it. It is to this day, to some degree, knowledge is power. But back then it was double fold. If you could read, write, you immediately had more power than the person who couldn't read and write, because you controlled the narrative. They bring you a piece of paper. Well, what does this piece of paper say? Oh, this says that if you sign it, I will protect your lands. Meanwhile, what the paper says is, I now own your lands. Thank you very much. Right? Like, you had power because you knew more than they did. Knowledge equaled power. And that is to some degree relevant today. There is what we know, there is what the government knows, and it's 9 times out of 10 two different things. And it has to be two different things, because there are things that they'll pick up on that would, might cause a little bit of nervousness, and they know that it's not going to happen or what have you, so they don't release it. Or sometimes they don't release it because, well, they don't release it. Again, knowledge is power. What they know, what you don't know won't hurt you, hopefully. That old fiddlesticks. But we have to be on guard, because the modern way of dealing with history is, if it's inconvenient, or if it's bad, or if it's not applicable, we cancel it, or we delete it, or we petition schools for it not to be taught in schools anymore. Erase it from the history books. And that's dangerous. Because again, we need to look at, okay, what caused this to happen? What were the causes of this? What got those people to this point? But if we forget, or we erase, or we stop teaching the mistakes, well, then they're not there for our next generation to learn from. They're not there to guide them to do something different. So are we really helping the next generation by bubble wrapping them? Putting them in bubble wrap and guiding them through life and making sure that they, one of the saddest things I've ever seen is, my kids never had this, but to me, and this might piss a few people off, but I always shake my head when I'm walking through the fair and I see kids on leashes. I just, what? How? Why? No, I don't understand that. I don't get it. Makes no sense to me. My kids never needed leashes, and they were the craziest shit. I mean, they were my kids. I mean,
That says a lot right there.
I'm surprised that 2 of them made it past the age of 18. Just really? Oh, wow. Congrats. But we have this modern outlook that we need to get rid of our faults. We need to erase our faults from history. No. We need to put them away, but we do not we can't live in a world where we forget them. Because give it a generation or two and we will repeat them.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no warning signs. If you take away the warning signs that there's a cliff up ahead and somebody drives off of it, can you really be surprised? You took the warnings away. But modern belief system is if it's bad, it must be eradicated. We have to get rid of it. Or if it doesn't fit our narrative, we must change it so that it does. Those ones are really scary.
Yeah, I think that happens more often, actually.
History rewriting. Or only telling half of a story is always fun. It happened a lot. Like when I was younger, it happened a lot. It doesn't have. It happens today. When you get to World War II. But there are glimpses of hope. We're not completely rolled away the stone yet, but World War II is told from a very one-sided situation. It's not. And then when it is told from the other side, it's very
painted in a negative light.
Yeah. They were evil. We were good. We did great. They did shit. Right? It's painted in a very wide brush. They never did anything good. They didn't do, we did everything well. They did everything bad. Everything they did was an atrocity. Everything we did was great. We got our hands dirty a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
But you would never hear about those times because we only talk about the good stuff.
We're the
Selective
victors,
memory.
so we got
yeah, selective memory. Like for instance, a lot of people will know about D-Day. Very little know about Dieppe. Why? One was this complete success. The other was an absolute clusterfuck. To put it mildly.
You want to learn about Dieppe? We did a video on it.
I think it's in the Canadian Constitution. I have to. But anyway, same with a few
Good
other
point.
videos we've done. Vimy Ridge being one of them. But but again, we don't ask ourselves, getting back to what I was saying before, who wrote this? Which side were they on? What was their motivation in writing this? Because sometimes that can show you more than reading the words in the book will ever tell you. But again, don't disqualify it. Just know that going in. When you're reading the book, know who your author is. If your author was very pro-American Navy, I don't see a lot of negative things about the American Navy or the Canadian Navy or whatever the case may be. If they're a staunch Royal Navy person, you're probably not going to get a lot of negatives about the Royal Navy. Because that's just their viewpoint. And John DeMarco, I would say that's even different than revisionist history, because a revisionist historian will change facts and change the way things were done to fit their narrative. A person who is just, for instance, go back to World War One, and you look at the only major naval battle of World War One. Coming out of that, if you were on the German side, the Germans won because they sunk more ships. They won. If you're on the British side, the British win because they maintained their dominance of the sea. Yeah, they lost a few more ships, but that's okay. We still kept them isolated. So we win. You can make arguments for either side. And they're not technically revising history. They're just telling it from their point of view. As I told you before, if you have one event go off, you have 5 people watching it from 5 different areas, you will have 5 different points of view of the same event. There will be similarities within their account, but there will be differences because they saw it differently. So that's why I say knowing your author and knowing their standpoint going in, you can digest the information and pick out the fruit of it and throw away the bad apples because you know what you're looking for. But it can still help you in your search for knowledge. So you don't want to say, well, this person was completely pro-British, so that book is disqualified. Well, no, there was probably some really good information. They probably really went all in searching for what the British were doing during that time period. Now, will all of his findings be 100% kosher? Probably not. He'll probably give the British a little bit more of a boost than what somebody from the opposing country would. If you need any sign of that, just go into any naval chat and watch the United States, people from the United States talk to the people from Britain. And when they get talking about the differences in their navies over the years, and you'll see it. Up until World War II, Royal Navy trumps everyone, which was pretty much true, but that's besides the point. But it's not just the importance of fact. Facts are great. But as Gordon says, context is everything. I can tell you something factual. I can put something factual into a statement and completely twist it so that it's being used for evil. But I can tell you the truth. If you think about it, the best villains there ever was in stories or in shows or movies are the ones that tell the truth but twist it to fit their narrative. They're telling you the truth, right? Vader, one of the biggest ways he injures Luke is by telling him he's his father.
Yep.
He's using the truth against him. All right. So you can look at it like that because it's hard for me to put the way my brain thinks into words. Not good at doing that.
Well,
But again,
they say understanding is a triple-edged sword. There's your side, their side, and the truth.
yeah, generally never the same.
Yep.
And that's why getting both sides of a story is so important. But unfortunately, in modern day, it's okay, which side do we believe is accurate? Or which side do we believe is right? Ooh, there's a scary word. Right. Which side is right? Well, that depends. Who is looking at the information? And you know, well, that depends on who's right. Well, that could mean many things because if you look at it, nobody goes to war thinking they're wrong. I hate to tell you this, but nobody goes to war believing they're wrong. Think about that for a second. Nobody goes to war thinking they're wrong. I always find it funny when a major event happens and we will and people will sit there and go, well, they must know that this is wrong.
Not to them.
Not to them. Right? No,
We may
they
think they're
don't.
wrong.
Yeah, we may think they're wrong. They don't. I got news for you. You're wrong. In their eyes, you're wrong. Newsflash. But we got to the point where we are so arrogant that we will look at a situation, and if we believe something or we think a certain way, we will approach a situation and go, well, they've got to know they're being stupid. Well, they've got to know they're wrong, right? Well, why are they wrong? Well, because we're right. Interesting. We've gotten too arrogant in our belief systems. And as I always say in these soapbox speeches, the words agree to disagree need to make a comeback. Because we have forgotten those awesome words. Agree to disagree. That's almost sacrilege nowadays. No, I cannot agree to disagree. I must argue with you until earth, fire, and brimstone rain down, or you agree that I'm right. I must yell at you until you agree I'm right. No. There's a point you reach where you're not going to sway either way. And at that point, you go, I agree to disagree, and move on. There's a key word there, move on. Because you're not going to get anywhere. We've lost the ability to do that. We get lost in our own trench war. Never-ending trench war. And it's sad, really. We've lost the ability to have difference of opinion be okay, which just baffles my brain. If
Oh,
you
we have
look
to have
at,
groupthink.
oh yes, 100%, which is just stupid. Groupthink, great. If the group thinks we're going over a cliff is a good idea, everybody goes over a cliff. There goes the dodo.
John DeMarco says, I agree that agree to disagree is the proper way to end a lot of disagreements.
Yes. Because there becomes a point in every argument where you're not going to win either way. You're not converting the person's not converting you. You're at a standstill. At that point, you have to agree to disagree and move on, or you are forever locked in that trench. Because you ain't getting anywhere. No one's making any ground. You're forever locked in that argument. Because you simply cannot accept somebody else having another opinion. Like I said, the points that make me laugh are when somebody goes, "Oh, can you believe these idiots? Oh, why don't they see it our way?" Because they don't. Doesn't make them less intelligent. Just means they see something from a different point of view.
Yep.
That, doesn't happen to be yours. Now, there are points of view that you can go, wow, that's special. But there's probably a reason they have these views, such as the people who believe that it is the Olympic on the bottom of the Atlantic. They buy in, hook, line, sinker, that they switched because it makes rational sense to them that it was switched. Okay. Interesting theory. Unfortunately, the evidence proves otherwise, which they will always counter with something else. But till you can show me how in the world in 6 months they were able to rebrand the entire ship with the proper numbers, then I don't understand. So, you look at things and it's good to look at certain points in history. But like I said, know your author. Know their standings. And sometimes you can't. I mean, you pick up a book, it was written in the 1860s. There's no real documentary on this author because there just isn't. But if you go into something with that mindset, you can pretty well tell pretty quickly into the book where this person sits. You can pretty well tell where this, as the story goes forward, if you're starting to notice, well, why are they only mentioning, what this side did? Why are they only mentioning that? Or why is it every time they mention the opposing side to this disagreement, it's always in a negative light? There are very big flashing signs. You can go, okay, so this was written from this perspective. The British were the right and the colonists were the bad. Or the opposite. The colonists were the poor, hard done by, just minding their own damn business, and these idiots come over the sea level and take over their villages. How dare these assholes? You can tell pretty quickly where this person's mindset is when they're writing this book, where their biases are. when they're writing it. And sometimes you just have to make an educated guess. And welcome, Dr. Alex. Hopefully you're doing well. But Jeff, I'll let you give some words because I've been yapping for 45 minutes. So I'll let you say a few things and then we'll
Well,
get out of here.
I was just about to say we've gone about 45 minutes and we're still on the air. We're not black. So
Yeah.
I think you did pretty well there.
Yeah.
And welcome, Dr. Alex. It's good to see you, sir. But yeah, as a public librarian, I just want to say that you need to look at things from as many perspectives as you can, get as many sources as you can on any particular aspect of history or in a historical event, because as Robert was saying, you're going to get different stories depending on who you listen to or who you read about or from. So get all those different aspects and find out what is the truth, slice through it all and hone in on what is the truth from all perspectives, because you're not going to get a complete story. You're not going to learn from history if you don't do that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I just want to wrap up with.
Yeah. You have to look at everything from all angles.
Yeah.
Because there's their side, and the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger the event, the more complex and diluted things can get.
Yeah.
And
you may get people that change the facts, as we've been talking about. If you get more sources, if you get more perspectives, you're going to get a clearer idea of what actually transpired. And you can root out those things that are not accurate.
And not only that, but if you look at it from the other side, if you go into a debate, when I used to debate in high school, I would always do more research on what the opposing team was going to be arguing than what I was arguing. Because for the most part, I pretty much have done that research already because I've formulated an opinion. I have a stance. So I've done the research already. So if I'm prepping for a debate, I'm looking at what they're looking at so that I can counter it better without just throwing out a buzzword, which is why I hate modern debates, because it's just buzzword, 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 buzzword. It's annoying. But when I used to prep for debates, I always prepped by researching what their opinion is going to be so that I could counter it. So you didn't end up on the stage and they point out this fact and you're sitting there with a deer in the headlights going, duh, I didn't know that was a thing. Shit. I'll have to get back to you.
Welcome back, Mrs. Canuck.
Welcome back, Mrs. Canuck. But yeah, so always look at every aspect, because sometimes it might surprise you what you find. World War II is a very interesting thing if looked at from all perspectives, and not just the accepted narrative. Because it was a very complex situation. And there were some really dirty, underhanded things done on both sides.
No. Not on both sides.
Some of the stuff Churchill did to get the United States into World War II was oops. But yeah, that's another live stream for another day. The mess ups, the stuff they learned from, we tell history from one point of view, and we don't mention the mistakes because we want to show this side strong, so you don't show their mistakes. Well, if you don't show their mistakes, how is a person supposed to learn how they got to where they got? If you don't show the road and you just show the end, that's a pretty boring story. So remember to read the entire book, not just chapters, when you're looking at a story or you're looking at an event. Read the entire book. Don't just read the opening monologue and the ending chapter. Read the entire book. And then you get a full picture. And with that, I'll thank Jeff for joining us. Thank you, everybody in chat.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, and good night.